Pill of Laughter says, hey, Pastor Mike, greetings. What's your advice on how to approach Numbers 31, the passage about sex slaves? God bless your ministry. It's really had an impact on my life. It's been a little while since I looked at this passage, so I'm going to have to just read it with you guys and hope that off the top of my head, something fruitful flows.
Well, this should be interesting. It's kind of weird because most Old Testament scholars never mention anything about this. And Numbers 31 isn't the only instance of sex slavery being practiced in Israel. In fact, sexual slavery was practiced at the very beginning of Judaism. But apologists don't want you to know that because they're apologists. Today, we are going to be talking about Mike Winger trying to justify the sexual slavery that is present in Numbers 31. And it seems like nearly all Old Testament scholars don't even want to discuss this issue. One of the few scholars is Hector Avalos. And this is how he describes this part of Numbers 31. Basically, the biblical author is allowing the killing of the families of these young virgins, who are then taken for what can be described as sexual slavery, as consent cannot be presumed on the part of these girls. Hector Avalos, Slavery, Abolitionism, and the Ethics of Biblical Scholarship, page 78. It's no wonder why apologists and biblical scholars wouldn't want to discuss this section. How can God mandate the practicing of sexual slavery? If God is supposed to be the foundation of everything good and moral, then how could he then command the Israelites to take sex slaves? These are very difficult questions to ask, but even more problematic to answer. At least for the apologists, that is. Because then it becomes a question of, do you hold to your whole God is good all the time and all the time, God is good mentality? Or do you sit back and you just admit that maybe God isn't the best basis for morality in this world? Mike Winger and apologists like him have to choose between these two options. So let's see what Mike has to say about Numbers 31.
The Bible doesn't have sex slaves. I just want the verses so I can read them. Is it verse 15 through 18? Let's read those and see. All right. Moses said to them, have you let all these women live? Behold, these on Balaam's advice caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and so the plague came among the congregation of the Lord. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known a man by lying with him, but all the young girls who have not known a man. This is the text I'll focus on.
Yes. God has specified that these young virgin girls are spoils of war for the Israelites. They are plunder, and they have no choice what happens to them. There is no consent here. It's not like the Israelites are rolling up in there, killing everybody, and then asking the girls out on a fucking date. No matter how you try to spin this, there's no way to get around the fact that these young girls do not have a choice in whether or not to become some Israelite savage's wife. In fact, most of the time, women in the Old Testament really didn't have a choice in whether or not they got married. In Genesis, we have Jacob, who would later become Israel, the founding patriarch of the Israelite people. He was eyeing Rachel to be his wife. Of course, nobody asked Rachel if she wanted to be sold off to this fucking asshole. But nevertheless, Rachel's father decided to con Jacob into working for him for 7 years as a debt slave. And all of this was done so that Jacob could buy her. Of course, Rachel's father, Laban, I guess, had the last laugh in it because he ended up selling Leah, Rachel's sister, to Jacob, to which Jacob didn't even realize that he had married a completely different person until the morning after he consummated the marriage. And then he had to work for a whole 7 more years so that he could purchase Rachel, the original person he wanted to buy. Like property. And then if you don't know how the story goes, Jacob ends up having kids with not only Rachel and Leah, but also their servant girls, who definitely did not have a choice in the matter of whether or not to bear his children. There is no consent in this story. Then if you shift over to Sarah and Abraham, Hagar, Sarah's servant girl, had no choice but to be impregnated by Abraham. There was no consent in this. I mean, the servant girl could have started out as just regular chattel slavery, possibly, But then it turned into sexual slavery when Abraham forcefully impregnated her. Also, one of the laws in the Bible is that if a girl is raped, then she can be sold off to her rapist. This entire system of purchasing wives and women in general in the Old Testament is sexual slavery. So yes, there definitely was sexual slavery in the Bible. It's all over the place. God definitely condoned the act of sexual slavery.
There's at least 3 major issues in this little section, but this is what he's asking about. All the young girls who have not known man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. So the brief little background reminder, and we have to have the background, is that the Midianites wanted to ruin the Israelites, and the king of Midian knew that God was protecting them, and they couldn't do this. And so Balaam counseled them. Well, the reason why you can't get them, Balaam was this prophet, right? He counseled. The reason why you can't get them is because they're honoring God, and as long as they're honoring God and serving God, Israel will be protected by God. But if you can get them to sin against God, then you don't have to attack them. God will deal with them for you.
That doesn't happen. Balaam is a prophet of God who is consulted by the Midianite king, and Balaam tells the king that God is favoring the Israelites because they're adhering to his will and wishes. What's not in the text is Balaam saying, hey, this is how you can fuck them up. Balaam ended up talking to several different groups in that particular section that lays out this incident at Peor. The Midianite king just walked away frustrated with the Lord's prophet there because the Midianite king wanted Balaam to curse the Israelites, but they had God's magical bull testicle spell protecting them. Sans the bull testicle, this is exactly what the Bible is telling us. Now, that's not to say that the Midianite king couldn't infer this information in some kind of way, but the important fact here is that the explicit call for the Midianite king to send in prostitutes and whores to fuck the Israelites up as far as in the sight of God goes, that's not in there. What the Bible does describe are the Midianites just naturally mixing with the Israelites, just 2 group of people getting along really well and deciding to fuck each other. Like in the good way. Of course, all that came crashing to a halt when an Israelite brought a Midianite girl into a tent and they started getting it on. Don't come knocking when the tent's swaying. It can't really rock. But anyways, and they did this while Moses was up there giving some kind of fucking speech. And so one of the other Israelites got a big dick and he decided to take a spear and kill both the Israelite man and the Midianite woman, and apparently that stopped the plague that had only just now been told to us that it was even happening. That's when that stopped, magically, apparently. It just, all those genital warts just cleared right the fuck up.